was having success in front of 75 to 100,000 people every Saturday and on TV in front of millions. So you can imagine when that comes to an end, it's a shock to the system, because now you have to really think about and discover that it's not about what you do. Even though what I just did was very successful and unique, I've got to tune in and figure out exactly who the person is, the human is, and not just focus on what I do.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Rest, Eat, Move podcast. I'm on a streak of really special guests, and we'll do this when I think they're the right fit. And so today we have Bill Burke in the hot seat. And if you don't know, Bill played at Michigan State from 95 to 1999, number 16, pretty tall left-handed quarterback. But today's conversation is more about his playing and more about just sports in general, but his message, and we'll get into some of his message. But Bill, thanks for coming in to chat. And I know we've talked on the phone, but we've never met in person, so.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate the invite. I love the work that you guys are doing here, and looking forward to the conversation.
So, everyone kind of wants to know about your playing career, so we'll give them the highlights. I have a couple highlights here, but it's better to come from you. Like I said before we began, I was on chat, and they said that you were still playing in 2001, 2002, so which wasn't accurate. So give us kind of like your high-level overview of your playing career.
Yeah, if I had to describe it in a word, I would say gratitude, because I think back to my career, and you only have this perspective once you've been gone for a long time and you've gotten a little older and a little more mature. But I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, loved the game, from the time I was a little kid. Dreamt of playing on TV at big-time college football, and then, hopefully going on to the NFL. So through many different factors, I was fortunate enough to kind of slide in the back door when Nick Saban got hired at Michigan State. I had a lot of interest from a lot of schools when I was in high school, but I would later find out that doesn't necessarily translate into, hey, we actually want to give you a scholarship to come and play at our school.
Got a lot of letters, but not
a lot of letters when I thought, I can go anywhere I want. That wasn't the case. So in terms of having Division I offers, I didn't have that many. But when Nick Saban got hired late in the process during my senior year, things moved quickly, and it just kind of worked out where I took a visit. They offered me a scholarship. It felt like what I pictured college to be, and I didn't know whether or not I'd ever get on the field, of course. But I just had a great experience. It wasn't easy at all.
Were you a Michigan State fan?
I was not. Coincidentally, though, my very first recruiting letter ever in my life when I was a sophomore in high school came from Michigan State and George Perlis. But ironically, I never got another letter from Michigan State for another 2 years until Nick Saban got the job. And I would later find out from, I just found this out a couple years ago, an assistant on George Perlis' staff at that time was recruiting me when I was in high school. And so he saw me, he came back to East Lansing, he told the staff, hey, I got this big lefty in Ohio. And the offensive coordinator said, I don't want him. He's left-handed. So that's why I never heard from him again until Saban got hired.
Can't go both ways. He needed that righty.
So anyway, I had so many great experiences, fortunately, because I saw guys that were way more talented than I was, and they didn't stick, for whatever reason, academic, or they got injured, or they just couldn't hack the routine and the rigors of being a Division I college athlete. But I was fortunate enough to work my way onto the field, and I started for 2 years and was a part of some of the most memorable games in school history. And I just could not be more grateful for that.
Yeah, and one of them was beating U of M, right?
That's right. My senior year, 99. And people ask me about some other big games that I was a part of, and they assume that those are my more memorable and favorable memories. But, man, that game, my senior year.
Your favorite game?
Was the University of Michigan for many reasons. It was at home. We both were undefeated going into the game. Everybody kind of said, well, we've seen this movie before. Michigan State will fold. That didn't happen. We pulled it out. And, the quarterback on the other sideline playing for Michigan was a guy named Tom Brady. So that was gratifying as well.
That's kind of the backstory. It gives you kind of context. And now you're in your second career, and that's kind of the goal of the conversation today, of that transition from athlete, even though it was backdoor, and you're kind of probably modest because I never got any offers from Division I football programs at all. But you think you're going to go in the NFL. You think that you're going to be on TV, and you were on TV, but at that next level. And then Take us from when you stopped at Michigan State. Obviously, you wanted to go to the next level. It sounds like maybe you tried to go to the next level, but take us over those next couple of years then to how you got to your next career.
Yeah, those were really critical years, not even from a career standpoint, even though at the time I thought that was everything. You know, I had this quote unquote career my whole life, which was being a football player. And then once that ended, I tried to figure out what the next thing was. But man, looking back, my entire life, for the first 24 or more years of my life, I was identified as an athlete and a quarterback and a football player. That's how I saw myself. But not only that, but as a youngster, as a kid, essentially, that identity kept getting reinforced to me by everybody around me. My parents, my friends, that's how they knew me. It wasn't just Bill Burke, it was Bill Burke, the quarterback.
And they're trying to encourage you and motivate you, right?
Sure. And then you take on top of that the success I was having. And I just wasn't having success. I was having success in front of 75 to 100,000 people every Saturday and on TV in front of millions. So you can imagine when that comes to an end, and I had a cup of coffee in the National Football League with the New York Giants, didn't get drafted, but was a free agent. When that all comes to an end, it's a shock to the system, because now you have to really think about and discover that it's not about what you do, even though what I just did was very successful and unique, and it was on a big stage. But I've got to tune in and figure out exactly who the person is, the human is, and not just focus on what I do.
Do you think this is a problem more today than it was then, or back then more than it is today? Where do you see, you work with a lot of athletes, and
I think it's still a big problem. I think it's always going to be a problem, because again, that stamp that is getting seared into your subconscious about who you are.
And it's the only way you can perform, kind of, is to go all in, right? You can't dabble.
Great point. You got to believe that you're the best in the world at what you do.
Yeah.
So I think it's still a problem. There is much more awareness around it now in terms of mental health.
Outlets and yeah.
There's a lot more resources and attention being paid to this, especially for athletes. But it's not just an athlete problem. And I think many people, just your average run-of-the-mill Joe Schmo, goes through their entire lives sometimes not realizing that something inside of them, and we're going to talk about identity, is actually the thing that's holding them back from getting everything that they dream of getting.
So you talk about identity inflation. We're going to talk about that. But when you think about identity or the next thing or figuring out who you are, do you think about purpose, or is it even deeper than purpose?
That's a part of it. And there's, I developed a framework and a process that I put people through, and it's not easy, and it's not a quick fix. It's not something you can just turn around in an hour. There's a lot of layers to it. So I think it's a problem for most people. I think a lot of people, for many reasons, including the stories and the narratives that they tell themselves or the environment that they grew up in, won't even allow themselves to go down this road to explore this stuff, because
it's scary.
It's a little scary, and they realize that there might be some information that they don't want to know, and some work that they might not want to do. So
some gaps.
Yes, some gaps.
We all have gaps. All right, so I love sports. Do you feel like you should have played at the next level, like when you think back, or is that not something that crosses your mind?
I think I could have done a lot of things differently during my college career had I had the knowledge that I do now.
Yeah.
I think coaching matters. I had a coaching change from my junior year to senior year, and I'm not, of course, making excuses. But coaching matters. I kind of got a little loose with some of my stuff my senior year. And so, you can go back and second guess things, but the thing that really it's taught me is, for years, Matt, I thought that I had failed and I didn't reach my dreams. But I realized after a lot of reflection that I lived my dream. Yeah. There are guys who would have killed to do what I did on a big stage, and I got to the highest level, save an inch.
Again, I got cut as a freshman on my high school golf team and ended up playing college golf. And again, I didn't have I never was going to take it to the next level. But yeah, there's two ways to look at it: failure, or wow, you started today about grateful and what you're going to use that knowledge to go forward at 49 years old and teaching students and athletes and executives and your kids and whoever you kind of come across. So let's talk about identity, inflation. It's kind of something that you've really coined and you call it the hidden driver of elite performance. Take us through this. What is identity inflation?
Identity inflation is the opportunity to expand your identity, to go from who you are and where you are to who you want to become.
So where you're currently seeing yourself to who you want to come.
Yes, correct. But it's one of the things that I failed to mention a couple minutes ago is people have these invisible identity ceilings, but the danger is not that they have them. The danger is that they don't even know they're there because who they've been and the person they've looked at in the mirror their entire life feels familiar. It feels normal. And they don't understand why sometimes that they feel stuck and they're here and they want to go there. Well, maybe it's an excuse. Maybe it's some external circumstances. Maybe it's I don't have enough resources. Maybe it's I don't have enough talent. None of those things are usually the case because all those other things can be solved. And so can identity. But if you don't know that identity is really something that you need to expand in order to raise your ceiling of performance, then how can you move the needle?
Does it protect people, that ceiling? I mean, like when you were playing, wouldn't it be safer just to be the backup? Wouldn't it, like, you wouldn't have to be scrutinized if you failed or threw an interception or lost to Michigan? Like, well, it's easier, right?
100%. And I talk to people about and really ask them if they are a fan of comfort. We all seek out this comfort. So what is comfort? It's familiar, it's average, and it's normal. It's not normal to seek your highest levels of performance, especially when you're comfortable. If
we're kind of designed to not be uncomfortable, right? So we're do everything we can to not be comfortable.
Right. We're seeking safety and comfort and low stress and calm and relaxation, and especially in 2026 as we sit here with every conceivable digital distraction available to us right in the palm of our hands. Of course, we're going to want to be comfortable. So if you don't want to be
uncomfortable,
if you don't want to be average and normal, then you have to go above and beyond what you currently believe is your normal.
Have you read Comfort Crisis? Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
On your way out, I'll give you a copy. But that's the whole premise is like we're in this comfort crisis. Everything's at our fingertips. And then you're playing the acute game of I want to be comfortable now for the long, uncomfortable game that we're going to set ourselves up for. So if you never leave the house, becomes uncomfortable to leave the house. And it's the same thing, I'm guessing, with 75,000 people watching you at Spartan Stadium. Can be uncomfortable, right? I mean, do the average person understand the anxiety and stress of just walking out the tunnel of Spartan Stadium or any level like that?
It's hard to understand that. It really is. And even for me, who did it a bunch of times, it never got completely comfortable. But I realized that the discomfort was all in the buildup and the uncertainty and the anticipation.
Right. You just want the game to start.
As soon as I took that first snap and the ball was in my hands, all that went away. I didn't even realize we were playing in front of anybody because it was familiar to me and it was something that I knew I could default back to my previous experience and have a success.
And as we go on this, don't you think when you create this identity of who you want to be, it makes that uncertainty more comfortable? Yet when you just get so fixated on this identity of who you are, anything outside of that is uncomfortable. So, being comfortable taking the snap, it makes sense for everybody. Or working at a job that, that's what you do. But what about the other stuff that becomes more uncomfortable because it's just this singular identity? I really love this concept. So you're talking the invisible ceilings, the safety that happens, and that prevents people from really tapping into this expanded inflation. What else from the identity standpoint?
Well, from where I sit and from the work that I do and from what I found is there are 5 identity battles inside what I call this leadership arena that I think people are fighting and they don't even realize it. And the first one is the battle of belonging. Some people in important roles are silently or subconsciously asking themselves, do I really belong here? The second one is the battle of vision. And this is a huge one for most people because it's like they don't ask themselves or take the time to ask themselves, am I thinking big enough? Most people do not even want to expand their mind long enough to have a bigger vision for themselves. They tell themselves lies like that's not meant for me.
Why do we do that?
our environment, our programming, we've all been programmed just like a computer, our parents, our environment. I was programmed to believe for 25 years that all I ever was good for and worthy of was my athletic skills. When my career ended, a lot of the people that kind of came out of the woodwork and wanted to be around me because it was exciting and it was special and it was successful, a lot of those people disappeared after my career ended. So what silent message did that send to me?
Sure.
So we all have those messages and all have those environments. So that's the battle of vision. The third one is the battle of courage. If you're in a corporate setting and you're in a leadership position and something's going wrong and it needs to be addressed, but you don't want to have that hard conversation because you feel like you might be judged for it, then
or punished for it or demoted, whatever.
I mean, you're not going to have the courage to walk into that room and say, "Hey, Matt, I got to talk to you about something important." So that's the next one. Then the battle of discipline. This is a hard one for people. Trusting yourself to say, am I going to show up and do what I need to do consistently, whether I feel like it or not? That was a big one for my coach, my head coach in college, Nick Saban. Can you make yourself do the thing that you know you need to do even when you don't feel like it?
Seems like he's the best at that.
Absolutely. And then finally, the battle of resilience. Adversity is going to come, whether you want it to or not. It comes for everybody. How are you going to respond to that adversity? And that's something that I kind of took for granted that I learned as a college athlete. I just assumed that everybody has that, but not everybody's been through what I've been through. So they don't naturally know how to bounce back from that adversity.
So belonging, vision, courage, discipline, and resilience. These are the five kind of things that create this.
These are underlying identity battles. And every problem that we run into, whether it's in the athletic space or in the corporate setting, can be mapped back to one of those battles. And I mentioned having hard conversations. That maps to the courage identity battle. And when you start to really identify what's going on with you from a real world perspective in your day-to-day role or in your day-to-day life, this can be about family and your relationships. I use the example, having hard conversations.
What made you discover this? Like, I obviously I'm tracking with your, from MSU, cup of coffee, the New York Giants, and then going in the corporate world, but you've thought about this deeply. Not everyone. Now, there's a lot of people that will discover their identity but won't write a book on it or come up with this framework. Like, what made you go so deep on this?
Because I want to find like-minded people who want to leave it, and I hate to use a football cliche, but who want to leave it all on the field in life like I do. And not everybody wants to do that, and that's totally fine. A lot of people are comfortable with the status quo in their life. They're comfortable, they're good. I'm not saying you shouldn't be. But if you do feel that pull, that calling to go higher and to push every single limit of the gifts that you've been given and maybe even discover some new gifts that you don't know you even have, those are the people that I'm speaking to. And a lot of times that problem, that resistance that we feel is our identity. And so many people make mistakes like thinking that our identity is your job title. Or what, fill in the blank. And it's usually not that thing.
Or mom or dad and maybe that is what you want. So like, how long till you feel like you really found your identity after sport?
Well, that's the fun part. I believe wholeheartedly that in life, in this pursuit that I'm talking about, there is no finish line. And so it's a constant evolution.
So you're trying to just expand it, just keep.
I mean, if you believe that expansion is infinite and limitless, how exciting is that? And that also means that you can exist in one identity for a period of time and then move into another one, or exist in multiple identities at once. You can have this professional identity. You can have this personal identity. How do you identify with your health?
Yeah.
Do you say to yourself, well,
I'm perfect now.
Or well, that perfect body that I just saw on TV,
yeah,
I'll never get anywhere near that.
Goes in both directions. Yeah, I mean, I wrote a whole book on the capacity, and human capacity is almost infinite.
Yeah.
And so the ability to believe that we're expanding and developing and growing each day versus, I'm sure you talk about, well, you played against a great example, Tom Brady, the 6th-round pick. It wasn't necessarily talent that got him to be considered the best quarterback of all time, right? So talent is important, right? We need talent, and obviously we can develop a talent, but
I'll give you a quick story about him, and I can't believe I'm going to sing his praises because
no.
I think maybe I've done this once in my entire life. It's just something in me. I can't bring myself to do it. I have a lot of respect for him, but there's a famous story when he got picked in the 6th round by the Patriots. He walked right up to the owner of the Patriots and shook his hand and introduced himself and said, "I'm Tom Brady. I am the best decision that your organization has ever made." Now, talk about identity expansion. I mean, nobody else believed that at the time, but he did. And you saw what happened next.
Were you in the same class?
Yeah. Yep. We were at the combine together. I wish I could remember, more details, but that was a long time ago.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you've gone through a couple of different identities since then, right? I mean, it's not as important to dwell on what would, coulda, shoulda. Yeah, I mean, again, the capacity is almost infinite, but you have to build it every day. And I think there's people we all have come across, you played with, that had way more talent, but then they hit a ceiling way quicker and had a huge identity crisis when it ended because they weren't trying to get better because they thought it just was talent. And then there's people that you came across that had probably zero talent that worked their butt off, put in the work, had the identity like Tom, the confidence, and can excel. So this is a fun kind of thing for everyone to think of, but it is scary. And you talk about, breakthroughs begin beneath the skin. Is that similar kind of tagline for this identity? Or
well, the next question, if you say, okay, I want to inflate my identity or expand my identity, how do I do that? I think that it's all about building these breakthroughs. That's how you do it. And people hear the word breakthrough and they go, oh man, that's got to be big. It's got to be dramatic. But that shifting your identity, I think, begins and really happens on a continual basis on a micro level. I mean, it could be something as simple as when you have a negative thought, which we all have, and they're tough to stop, really. It's easier to stop our speech. Do you stop that negative thought from coming out of your mouth? Just do that. Even if you continue to have the thought, can you just stop yourself from saying the words out loud that are going to have a negative impact on your identity over the long term? So that's one thing, but there's a million of them, right? So that is a breakthrough. If you can develop habits that slowly start to shift and turn the ship around over time, you would just continue to build these mini breakthroughs. And then you look back on your life a year later and you go, man, I'm a completely different person.
Is there any top 3 that you really like to focus on? When you were talking about just the mental piece, have you taken Dale Carnegie or familiar with any of their training?
No, I haven't taken that.
So Dale Carnegie's, one of his golden rules is the 3 C's, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. And if you did that for a whole year, or at least you had intentionality around it, you'd be a completely different thinker, right? Because think about the last time that somebody cut you off or you're waiting in line and we criticize and we condemn and we complain where we think about the news cycle or what's happened in the stock market. But the power of not criticizing, condemning, and complaining, and in 2026, it's never been probably higher if you could measure it. And he wrote his Dale Carnegie book in the 20s, teaching people how to perform. But it made me think about that from a mental perspective. And, you come from a physical sport, but I'm not filling words in your mouth, but I'd probably say that you'd say the same thing, that playing quarterback is more mental than it is physical when you try to go to the next level.
Oh, 100%. And what we're talking about here today, all of this is mental.
Right.
It really is. It all starts in your mind. I'll give you a great example. I use this all the time. I'll tell you a little story. So I was working with a young professional in the finance space, right? Successful guy, young guy. I was in a meeting with him and somebody asked him how or why he didn't hit his previous month's target. And this is part of his personality, but his response was, because I suck. And he said it jokingly, okay? And everybody knows that. Everybody that was in the room knows that. But he also revealed later in that meeting, or in the same conversation, that he doesn't always show up to every client meeting fully prepared, right? Okay, so I'm a big student of the subconscious. We have this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system that filters out, the things that we're not looking for, the things that we don't believe. So to get back to this young professional, so let's connect those dots, right? So he says, I suck. The subconscious does not know whether you're joking or you're being truthful. It doesn't know the difference between an imagined event or a real event. All it's doing is taking your instructions. So when you say, I suck, your subconscious says, okay, got it. It's like giving an order at a restaurant.
We're going to bank it.
Yep.
We're going to bank it.
So what your subconscious does is, without you realizing it, now you go to that meeting not fully prepared. And what's the result of that? Over a 30-day period, you didn't hit your target. Completely unaware that the negative impact those joking, quote unquote, joking words was having on his business.
Well, and he's uncomfortable, obviously, and he's trying to get comfortable. And you hear about a lot of comedians that really are trying to make up for, like, they're funny because that's their, and that's, again, the power of what you say to yourself is we're our own worst critics. I mean, the hygiene, if someone was doing an audit of what we tell ourselves, we're the worst champion and friend could ever have, and you wouldn't even have that person in your life, yet we do it constantly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's probably a huge breakthrough that takes micro intentionality.
I mean, you could probably put one of your products at your house. You put it back. You take it out. You consume some of it, then you put it back in the wrong cupboard, and you might have said to yourself, "Well, that was stupid."
Yeah.
You don't understand the effect that has on your identity over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's one little thing, language, but it's so huge in the grand scheme of things.
So, like this, you talk about pressure and success versus pressure, but you feel like if you really create these breakthroughs, you create this mapping, you can start to relieve some pressure to start to be more successful. Is that kind of what you're trying to teach people to do? Because we're creating a lot of I mean, today's workforce, I think 60% consider their work the number one stress in their life. It's not a good thing, right? So you hear about quiet quitting, you hear about disengagement, you hear about people saying, I'm fatigued, or, I have nothing left at the end of the day. But from an identity standpoint, that's got a huge impact.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that I get this message to not just individuals, but to corporations and their leadership and their executives who are constantly thinking about the performance of their workforce and how to improve that. And a lot of times, these corporations collectively are spending billions and trillions of dollars on skills and talent and all those industry metrics that they think are going to, those are going to move the needle, when they're completely clueless about the fact that if we just work on your people's identity and expanding what they think is possible for themselves, and have them start to look at themselves as collaborators, partners, problem solvers, instead of just cogs in the wheel and order takers and task managers.
Well, your first one was belonging. So, I mean, today's real issue right now is the loneliness crisis, even though we're so connected and distracted. I got to imagine when you don't have the identity, I mean, loneliness is creeping right up on you. And so when you're thinking about teamwork and collaboration and building something, an organization's a group of people, right? Mm-hmm. But if everyone's silently lonely because they don't feel the belonging, because they don't have the true identity, I mean, that sounds like a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word engagement. That's what companies are really worried about. How come my people aren't engaged? Well, it's not just about, this is very important, how those people are seen by you, the boss, quote unquote, or the organizations, but also, how are they seeing themselves? Maybe they're not engaging.
I think that's a more important conversation, because no one wants to really talk about it. And you talk about anxiety's never been worse. These are some silent things that are happening inside our body, inside between our ears, that I think sometimes from an organization, from a comfort crisis, we don't even want to think about that our people are, don't have an identity. Because that seems like something that they're not going to be able to control. And they can't, right? That's the point of what you're trying to teach, is like, this isn't something someone else can do for you. Now, there's framework and some awareness, but you can't necessarily help someone find their identity unless they do it. You can't do the work for them.
That's right. And you can't throw the wrong resources at them, because that's just going to be like
confusing,
wasting time, money, and resources. You can give somebody all the resources that you think they need to perform the job. But again, there's a ceiling, an invisible ceiling, that's going to cap all that if they don't see themselves the way they need to.
I mean, where are you seeing the most traction in your work, or like the most traction and the most resistance? Like, it requires work, doesn't it? Like, there's going to be some effort. And you said it, one of the things that drives you is you want to, perform with like-minded people and see how well we can expand. But I'm guessing if you're like me and the work that we do, it's not always the case that you find people that are willing to do the work.
Yeah.
They want a kind of easy solution. They want that easy button, but they're not willing to do some of the hard work.
Well, I'm trying to change people's perspective also from the leadership perspective and the people inside the companies I'm big on words and language, and it is work. It does require effort, but man, what if we didn't view it as work? What if we viewed it as this exciting thing that we get to control? So many of us think that we are powerless in terms of creating our own futures. We think we're at the mercy of the weather and the organization that we work for and, all these external circumstances. And I really like to tell people one of my quotes that I kind of came up with, it's in my book as well, and I share it in my talks, is victory, however you define that, is actually based on internal decisions, not external conditions. So when you decide that you can be greater than you ever imagined in whatever area or capacity that you thought, that's exciting stuff. It doesn't feel like work. It's like, wow, okay, let me sit down with a pen and a paper and maybe a coach and map out exactly what I want. Not what I think I could have, but what do I want? Let me take all the reins off. Let me just blow the roof off of my imagination here, and let me just think about that.
That's pretty profound. And I think I hear this a lot, and it reminds me of what you're teaching, is it's really, again, it's what we say. It's easy to say what we don't have. I wish I could have this, or I don't have this resources, or I need another employee, or I have too much work, or what's, what we don't have or what's bothering us, versus not a lot of people talk about what they want or what they do have.
Here's why. People are overwhelmed by thinking about what they want. If you sit somebody down who has a lower identity, a lower perception of themselves, and you ask them, what do you truly want, Matt? Not what you think you could have, not what your friends think you should have, not what your neighbors think you should have or they have. What do you truly want? They're overwhelmed by it because how am I going to get there? Is it going to require that work? What are people going to think? And you can list 100 other things. And so they just go, it's probably better just to stay safe where I am. Everything's good. I'm healthy. I got a job,
Even if it's not safe where they're at, where they're saying, I don't have this, I want this, this is broken, I don't feel very good.
And I don't want to use a strong word here, but I'll say it anyway. In some cases, they might be addicted to their reality because they might have had that reality like I did for 25 years, and they're comfortable with that.
Or they want it again.
I was addicted to my reality as a player. I didn't want to leave that world, even though it was really hard, because the future was unfamiliar. I didn't have any experience with any of that stuff outside of sports. Did you
ever have anyone ask you after that, like, what do you want? Like, who was the first person to ask you what you want?
No.
Yourself?
No, myself. Yeah.
You had to find that. You had to make the mistakes.
I had to go learn from mentors through books and podcasts and coaches that it was okay to ask myself that question. I wasn't at the mercy of somebody else telling me what I could have. And that sounds easy enough, like, sounds obvious, of course, but so many people don't even stop to make that realization.
Yeah, that overwhelm is, it's crippling, but I think it's part of really the journey is like, you got to get to be the kind of controller of your destiny. I like Tony Robbins for the most part. I think some of his stuff, he's been doing it so long, gets cheesy or out of context or whatever, but the power of within, the pain creates change.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's not enough pain, but then sometimes we're also not even thinking about what we're capable about or what we want. We just say, well, I can't do that, or all these excuses. So I think creating that identity inflation or expanding someone's identity or understanding that you can control your identity in a way of, you don't have to just be in this box.
That's right. We have so much more power than we realize to create our reality, our future, our identity. And my mission is to help people understand that they have the power to do that.
Well, it's like, we can't control the future and we can't change the past, yet we spend all our time worrying about the future or the past. And in the identity, I'm guessing you're giving very micro context of what you do right now. And hopefully that will change the future. In most cases, if you do these small steps, it will.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we can't control the external circumstances of the future, but we can control and create our future by the thoughts and the identity that we expand today.
And that's what was pretty cool when I read the breakthroughs begin beneath the skin. That sounds like that's really the concept, is like,
yeah,
you got to go within.
I'll use another sports analogy. Most people think that, oh man, this team, has been down and they've been up and down and they finally broke through and won the championship. Breakthrough today. The confetti's falling.
Yeah.
The trophy, everybody's celebrating. That's not where the breakthrough happened. Right. It happened years earlier in a dark room somewhere, when there was no cameras and guys were just going through the work.
It's kind of like Indiana. The breakthrough wasn't this season.
Right.
Right. Some things went in place probably way before they even hired him, and
exactly
changing the culture and what they want to invest and where they're looking.
But if you want to boil it all down, Curt Cignetti, who I love, the head coach of Indiana football, who did the unthinkable and the impossible, creating the future that we saw this past fall, that all began in his mind because he came onto campus and he knew the thinking of how it had been there for decades. Right. And he said, no, that's not going to be our reality. That's not going to be our identity. And 2 years later, he went from the worst program in college football history.
It's a good point.
Champions.
And there's no other way. If you don't change the identity, there's no way to get that reality.
And you can call him cocky or whatever, but that whole Google me,
whatever, yeah.
His identity was, no, I'm a championship coach and I'm going to lead this team to a championship.
Yeah.
That was a lot of the other coaches would have walked in there and said, well, our identity is here because this is Indiana.
Well, they're going to try to get to the Big Ten championship game. What?
Maybe they might say that. Do they really believe that their identity is aligned with that goal? Right. Probably not.
Right.
But Curt Cignetti did.
He's shooting for the moon. He's trying to go to the moon. And he's talking about it, he's thinking about it, and he believes it. And belief is powerful.
He didn't coach football. He changed the way millions of people thought. His program, his players, the alumni. He changed what was possible for that program.
Yeah, it's really cool. What are some habits that you do right now in your space to make sure that you're aligning with your identity and where you want to expand your identity?
I am very careful with what I say, and I still slip up a lot too. I catch myself. I have negative thoughts every single day. It's really, really hard to stop negative thoughts. It's a lot easier to stop your speech. So I tend to start these internal messages to myself with words like I am, I have, and I choose, instead of I will, which isn't bad, but that keeps your subconscious thinking that whatever you want is still way off in the future. And it always keeps it in the future. It keeps it away from you. So I always...
I am, I choose.
And I have. So
Have you seen the Cristiano Ronaldo clip where they're zoomed in on his mouth before a free kick? And he's talking about, I'm going to take it across the barrier. And he's got all these self-affirming speeches. And he's verbally saying them. Probably not out loud that you can see, and maybe he is because you probably think he's crazy enough and you're not going to get in the way of his, but he's setting himself up for that. He's visualizing success before.
100%. 100%. Because how many people actually tell themselves and visualize the negative?
Right.
All this.
Well, I played college golf. That water over there.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say don't hit in the water, you hit it in the water.
When you say things like, of course, the light just turned red and I'm late and I'm in a hurry.
Yeah.
When you say things like that, it sounds completely harmless. You're building your identity and you're building from a place of negativity. And you can believe it or not, but when you start to say those things and believe those things, that ends up creating more of those things.
I think so speech is a big one. What other daily habits?
Whatever works for you in terms of getting yourself into a more positive and more energetically productive feeling. For me, and we talked off the air before we started, for me that is a physical exercise and lifting weights. Not for my body, although it helps that, of course, as you know, but for my mind. I can be in the worst mood possible, and then I go lift weights, and I start to get these creative ideas. My mood lifts. I can't do that right now because I've got some shoulder issues.
But we're working on that.
That's huge for me, but that's not going to be the case for everybody. So
well, I mean, when you think about, I read this really interesting thing I deal with a lot of people that you would never know really struggle with anxiety, and anxiety is a physical energy. And so in our world,
emotional. Yeah,
in our world where a lot of the things that may trigger it are very like in a confined space or sitting still or in the car or wherever you're at on an airplane, it's because of the lack of energy that you can't release physically. So I think you did say maybe not for everyone. No, I think everyone moving their body is going to have a positive emotional impact.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, that's one of your top things that you really have to do.
You can also, if somebody is new to this and just wants a simple thing to start practicing, you can also use the phrase, I am the type of person that, fill in the blank, makes healthy food choices. Even if you don't 100% of the time, you kind of get into this thing where, am I lying to myself? Just start saying it.
Versus saying, I'm a picky eater, right? Just saying, I've always been this way.
Or grabbing the bag of chips and saying, I have no willpower.
Yeah.
No, I choose health. You can just start with those 3 words. I choose health.
All right. So what's the third one? So speech, gotta move your body. Anything else that you're doing? The 3 things daily to really keep making sure your identity's.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, and I am a big proponent of imagining and visualizing the future. I'll give you this, and this is a cliche that we've all been programmed wrongly in our lives, but we've all heard it. You as well, I'm sure, have heard this expression, I'll believe it when I see it. That's actually backwards. You'll see it when you believe it. And it's exactly what Curt Cignetti did. He saw it before anybody else. He saw it and believed it, and then he saw it. So the signs that sometimes people are looking for, I'll wait for a sign and then I'll start my new health regimen. No, that's actually backwards. The signs follow, they don't come first.
Well, it's like the saying, if you think you can't, you're right, and if you think you can, you're right.
Exactly.
So visualization, is that something that you like journal or map or just straight visualization?
I think it's just, for me, I don't do a lot of journaling. It's just imagining and not just thinking about what I want, but actually attaching to feeling, because that's really where the creation starts from all the study and research that I've done. That's not easy to do, I will say that, because our mind is racing 1,000,000 miles an hour, and we've got tasks, and I got to do this, I got to pick up the kids, but if you can attach feeling to that thing that you're visualizing, that's pretty powerful.
Did you visualize much when you played?
Well, I was just going to say, I knew nothing about this. Nobody told me anything about this. I don't know where I got the idea to do it for one game, and it was that Michigan game. I just decided, because there was so much pressure, and I wanted to do well so badly. I did not want to screw up the game for our team. And this was huge, right? We're both undefeated. College Game Day from ESPN was there. And so I just spent a couple minutes. I'm sure I didn't even do it right, but I just imagined myself completing passes in the stadium, what uniform I was wearing, what plays I was going to be.
This is the only game you did that in?
The only time I ever did it. And I didn't do it for very long. It was probably a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there was a correlation or not. I happen to believe that there was on some level. But I set a school record that day, and more importantly, we beat our arch rival.
Yeah, that means big deal. Coming from Ohio, maybe you had that subconsciously in your mind to hate Michigan back then too, before you even became a Michigan State alumni and fan. What about, again, I think the work that you're doing is so powerful, and the message is, because sometimes we have to look up to people that we think we could never do something, and it kind of motivates us. But I think your message is really like anybody, and you're just like anyone else. Now, you have this identity for 25 years of playing big-time football, but still didn't mean you didn't have challenges and setbacks and hurdles to jump over. And then after it, maybe there's even a bigger gap of finding that identity after you had such an identity. I mean, some people at 25 might be blessed that they don't have some of these parameters around their identity, that they're starting from scratch, or can kind of put their past, on the wayside. I'm sure a lot of people still, they just want to talk about those things, and you're ready for some other conversations or impact that you're trying to make. But when you think back in your career playing, exercise, nutrition, recovery, how far has that come from 1999 to when you did it? And
oh my goodness, light years.
Like bring us back to like 99. So I had an employee in here and I asked them when they were born. They were born in 2004. And so just, it's been a long time since you played. What's changed in the game from nutrition, exercise that you've seen?
Well, just my knowledge and my pursuit of that. I had zero nutrition knowledge. Nowadays at Michigan State, for example, and a lot of the Big Ten athletic programs, they've got a nutritionist on staff.
Right.
And there's more education, there's just more knowledge around.
So like what were you eating? Like what?
Anything I could get my hands on, because my number one goal was to gain weight. That's it. It wasn't to be healthy. It wasn't to learn what ingredients are going into my body.
It's funny you said that, because when Kirk Cousins came to see us when he was at Michigan State, and that was his number one goal. So it must be a quarterback goal at Michigan State.
So I cringe now, but it was,
powders and milk and
not even that. It was, Whoppers at Burger King and McDonald's.
Whatever you could get.
Whatever had the highest calorie count. That's what I wanted.
So it's come a long way.
A very long way, to the point that, maybe you can give me some advice off the air, but I'd like to put on some weight even now. But the reason I've always been thin and had a hard time putting on weight, which is the opposite problem for a lot of people. So I realize that, but believe me, it's just as difficult. But now I've eliminated so much out of my diet because I just can't consciously, as a person who identifies as a person that makes healthy choices, I know if something's horrible, I can't put it in my mouth. So there's a very limited number of things that I can actually eat.
Yeah, there's a range of creating some of that focus that but yeah, we can talk offline. But yeah, if you can, there's not a lot of healthy food out there.
Yeah,
especially on the go or in a bag or a box or a package, and
that's the whole convenience thing. That's why our nation has a problem, and it's hard for me to get my hands on calories.
Exercise wise, you still love to move your body, and that's a big part of your daily routine. But like, how far has that come in the game?
I love and always have loved lifting weights. Continue to do that outside
Before
of
college.
In high school, and it just, I don't know, it makes me feel good. And that's the only reason I think I need, it just makes me feel good. In recent years, I've really enjoyed adding walking outdoors to that. Again, just for mental clarity.
Stillness.
I'll do some deep work, and I'll kind of get to the point where my body and my mind starts to feel like, all right, time for a break. Go for a walk in the sun, and man, that's medicine. I really struggled this past winter, to be honest, because winter's harder to get outside. I've got a treadmill. That was still pretty good, but not the same.
Yeah.
So I've added that. And then if there's something like pickleball or playing catch with my son that keeps me active, you're moving, but there's a certain satisfaction from doing that activity in and of itself. That's fun for me as well. I think I'll always be an athlete on some level. At least that's the goal.
Were you multi-sport, or football was your...
I played basketball up through my freshman year in high school, and then just realized, I got my thing, and that's just what I'm going to concentrate on. So,
cool. In your work, and who are you trying to really help, with your systems and programs right now? Is there a specialty that you're trying to really tap in that you see the demand or need?
Where I really see a need is in performance-based industries. So those are finance and insurance, human resources, because obviously their job is to develop their people for optimal performance. Real estate, healthcare, leadership is a big component of this, because not only can leaders, if they are equipped and aware of this issue with their people, help those people, this issue also exists with people in leadership positions as well. And
I think the human resource department usually is the most overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They have probably the biggest ceiling.
Yeah.
That limitation ceiling, and yet they're the ones tasked with developing people.
And think about this, as leaders expand their identity, that sets the standard for the entire organization and the people that they lead. So you're almost giving the people that you lead permission to expand their identity if you're expanding yours.
Yeah, and it is scary. And again, I think corporate America, for the most part, doesn't like scary.
But it's exciting.
Yeah, exciting.
We're looking for higher performance.
Yeah.
We're looking for everybody to win. That's exciting.
I mean, when we wrote Capacity, that was the reason, is because we would lead with, let's take care of your people's health. And they're like, well, we have a over there in the corner there on the, let's dust it off. We have a wellness program. And you're like, but that's like an optional, it's not part of the culture. That's opt-in if you want, nice to have, but it's not a necessary thing. And so then we write capacity, and then they're thinking, well, yeah, we need capacity.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I've been trying to teach you this for 10 years, and you're saying it's over in the corner. And so it's what you say, it's how you say it, it's looking at it from an exciting standpoint versus I have to do it. So yeah, that's a powerful thing that I think more and more people want. So you talked about Saban. You talk about Saban a lot. Obviously, he had a big impact on your playing career, and I'm sure he had an impact on your life. But he's a guy that has a true identity. And what did you learn from him? What did you observe from him that really had the biggest impact on you?
Oh my goodness, we could do a whole
I know
2 hours on that. There's so many Sabanisms, and I love the fact that I was exposed to him. I got a front row seat to who I call one of the top CEOs in the country. Not just football coaches, but CEOs and leaders. And for 5 years, and that maybe was my biggest blessing. It wasn't throwing touchdowns in Spartan Stadium. It was getting to watch this guy and play for him and learn from him.
What was his first year?
95. I was there the exact same time he was. I was in his first recruiting class, and he left one game before my final game, which was the bowl game. He took another job. So pretty much the exact same time. But I don't know how much time we have, but I can share a story about his identity in terms of leadership. So we go on the road to play Ohio State. They're ranked #1 in the country in Columbus my junior year. We are not a very good football team. We're like 4-4 at that time. We didn't even go to a bowl game that year. 28-point underdogs. But we're in the game in the third quarter. We're down 17-9, and we're hanging in there, and we've got a shot. And I throw an interception that gets returned for a touchdown. And I am just so livid with myself because I think I just blew it for our entire team. And I'm from Ohio, and they didn't want me. So there's a lot going on here. So I come off the field, and he calmly grabs my arm. He just wants to talk to me. He doesn't want to yell at me. But I, in an angry state, just continue to the sideline. I rip my arm away from him, and I go sit down and feel sorry for myself. He doesn't chase me. He turns around, continues to coach in the game. We go on to shock the world and beat the #1 team in the country. The locker room after is just crazy. It's euphoric. He gives me a huge kiss on my cheek. Coaches are hugging players. I had never seen that before. We just accomplished the impossible. So the next day, we go into the building as we did every Sunday, stretch and stride, just break a sweat, make sure everybody's alive and well. He talks to us as a group for a couple minutes. Then we go home, and then we come in the Monday morning to watch the film, as we did all the time. We're waiting in the lobby as a team to be called in to the meeting room so we can go watch the film. Director of Operations comes out and says, "Hey, Bill, Nick wants to see you in his office." And so I go in there, and I think, wow, I'm going to get some extra personal one-on-one praise from the boss. And I walk in there at 6:45 in the morning. I'm a college kid. I'm like half asleep still, And he went off the field. He almost whispered when he talked. So it was kind of creepy, kind of scary. Opened the door to his office, invited me in, told me to have a seat, talked very quietly and calmly. And that lasted about 2 seconds because he immediately started to berate me, ripped me up one side and down the other for pulling my arm away from him during that game when he wanted to talk to me. Now, here's the thing I tell leaders when I'm on stage. 99 out of 100 coaches, leaders would have let that slide because of the outcome of the game. We just shocked the world and upset the entire college football world on national television. And his identity was such that he was not going to let that slide and negatively impact the identity of his organization. So that gives you some insight as to what type of leader he was.
What was he trying to say to you when you're coming off?
Well, I think I have no idea. I didn't give him the time to do it.
Yeah.
I just kept going. I didn't even pause. And I kind of fibbed to him when I was in front of him. I said, I didn't really realize that was you.
Right.
I was just trying to get out of that conversation as quickly as possible. But it was about respect for him, number one. And I've seen this so many times with athletic teams and corporate organizations.
You let a little thing slide in.
You look up, you probably have a favorite team and they did really well. And then like a year later or 2 years later, you're like, they got pretty much the same team. How come they're playing? Like, how come things are not going well? Well, the fabric of that fiber starts to come undone by little things like that. We talked about how changing our identity can be very micro level. And Saban inherently understood that. And he said, I'm not letting that slide just because we won the game. It's not about winning the game.
What was the final score of that game?
28-24.
Wow. And when you threw that pick, it was 20.
4-9, we were losing.
Wow.
And we came back.
So you must have had a good game after that.
And the other thing is his whole claim to fame was his process and how outcomes are actually distractions. And that's a hard thing for people to get their head around.
It's hard today in today's game because you're fired if you don't have an outcome, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Corporations are focused on metrics.
What do you think about Brian Kelly got fired for
Yeah.
10-4 or whatever at LSU?
But the reason we won that game is because he consulted a clinical psychologist who told him, this is how you approach playing the number one team in the country when your team thinks that they can't win.
Elko? Is it Kevin Elko? Is
No.
that who did he use?
Lonnie Rosen at Michigan State.
I know he's real close with Elko out of.
Yeah. So that's a whole different podcast episode, his process and his approach to winning. It's not about the outcome at all. So that was really the turning point in his career. And he's admitted that publicly. That's when he went from being a transactional leader to a transformational leader. And he was in the process of learning about himself and his own identity as well in that moment.
Well, you got a good front row seat that you probably didn't even realize you were watching at the time.
Oh, I had no idea.
And you led today with the gratitude that you have for the playing career. And I look at it and it was a hell of a playing career, especially some of the stats. But yeah, when you're in it, obviously you're a competitor. You just told the story about when you feel like you fail at, that's the burning desire. But having that identity outside of it and in your next ventures, is there anything you want to leave the listener with for how to get a hold of you or, where to see some of your content?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm most active on social media on LinkedIn. I think that's the most appropriate
for you. Yeah,
for what I do. But if I can help any of your listeners with helping them expand their identity, inflate their identity, or building breakthroughs either as an individual or organization, just head over to bill-burke.net and book a call and let's talk.
My big takeaway, I had a lot of takeaways, but I love talking about expanding capacity. You're talking about expanding identity to do that capacity, to be a better leader, be a better parent, be a better athlete. I'm sure you love working with young athletes too, that trying to teach them some things that you wish you knew then. That's always the great part about mentorship, is like trying to help people not have to go through the challenges. Now, you got to always go through a little bit of muck.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You can't avoid it, really.
You're not going to helicopter mentor. You're not going to mow the lawn for them, but allowing them some better stepping stones or guidance along the way. And I think that's what you're doing. And again, thanks for coming on today. I think the biggest thing, though, is these breakthroughs that you talked about, these micro breakthroughs, and how really tapping in internally to what's power, potential. What do we want? Even if it's overwhelming, to me seems like something we all should try to strive for to be our best in whatever we're doing. So thanks for coming on. We'll have you back. Tell us the process of, Saban. I think that'd be really interesting. But until next time, see ya.
Thanks, man.